got to get into science, they've got to get into the fields of physics and chemistry and things like that to really understand how awesome the Creator really is.
Well, you know, this lesson bring out about what feeling like to meet the Ethiopian.
Yeah.
I cannot understand what I'm reading in there if someone.
That's humility. That's humility. It's private.
I don't want her to feel jealous. She had to come and hug this morning. She didn't give me time to get around here. I was coming. She was just anxious to get this good hug. I understand. Yeah, this thing is so powerful.
There. Give you a prayer. One of the greatest scientists ever. He believed.
University gave her an honorary doctorate. The United Nations distinguished Mrs. McCartney with a medal for her selfless commitment to education. When we serve others, miracles happen. Let us commit to supporting our local church budget with zest worthy of our Lord. Our local church budget sponsors programs that affect our communities and neighbors. When asked why she chose the University of Southern Mississippi as a recipient of her donation, Mrs. McCartney responded, "Because it's here." Our local church budgets are here, in need of our support. Let us pledge our sympathy.
Good morning. Happy Sabbath. Is it on? All right, Paul's going to get that. Thank you, Paul. Get this here. All right. Amazing, just a few feet difference can change things on your phone. I'm glad you guys are here this morning. It's a beautiful day, isn't it? I said that already, but I love the sunshine. I'm from Washington State, and I'm from the dry side. So we don't get the clouds quite as much as the side that you usually hear about. So I like the sunshine. But I'm glad you guys are here. And, as we think about this new year, as we started the new year, I think communion is the perfect way to start the new year off. Just a refocus as we get into the new year. So I'm glad that we're doing that today. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And this year, as we do communion, we typically do that 4 times a year. I'll be speaking about different aspects of communion. So we'll learn a little bit about the communion service during this time. Today, we're going to be focusing in on the foot washing aspect of communion, which I believe is a really important part. But before we do that, let's just have an added word of prayer, if that's all right. Dear Father in heaven, Lord, I thank you so much for the opportunity we have to, again, just be before you. I ask you would lead the words that I speak, that they would only be your words, that they would not be my words, because my words are oftentimes selfish and full of pride and sin. But Lord, I help them to be your words, that they would honor you, and be with each one of us, Lord, as we spend this time together, as we've already been spending time together. May we just know that you're with us. Pray this all in your name. Amen. So, I was thinking about this, thinking about Communion Sabbath. Now, Communion Sabbath, I don't know about your experience, but for me, Communion Sabbath was often a Sabbath where there was less people at church because, well, it's just one of those things that sometimes maybe we're not so comfortable with. Unfortunately, that's oftentimes true, but it shouldn't be true. It should be the most exciting Sabbath of all Sabbaths, to remember what Christ has done for us. And, you know, actually, if you look back to the early Christian church, they observed communion way more than 4 times a year. It was quite frequent. When they would gather together, they were breaking bread, praying together, doing things like that. Sounds like communion service going on there. They had communion quite regularly. Now, even for those who attend communion service, maybe the foot washing aspect of things, it gets a little bit uncomfortable. And that's why I want us to think about that today. Why is it uncomfortable? Maybe there's another way we can look at it. Because, well, it's just a little bit awkward when you have to clean that other person's stinky feet, you know? And maybe my feet, they've got, sock grime on them. And, it's a little bit awkward, but there's something special about this service and why we do it. We don't do it because we enjoy smelling feet. We don't do it because we enjoy cleaning sock grime off each other's feet. We do it in remembrance of what Christ has done for us. I think it's a really, really special thing for us. So let's look at John chapter 13. I hope you brought your Bibles. If you didn't bring your Bible, perhaps you have your phone. You could look it up on there. John chapter 13. Now this is kind of the final moments of Christ's life. John chapter 13, verses 1 through 5. Let's read this. It says, "Now before the feast of Passover, when Jesus knew that his hour had come, that he should depart from this world to the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. And supper being ended, the devil having already put it into the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, to betray him, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he should come from God and was going to God, rose from supper, laid aside his garments, took a towel, and girded himself. And after that he poured water into a basin, and began to wash the disciples' feet, and to wipe them with the towel with which he was girded." This is really an amazing moment. Christ is doing something that's unthinkable as he is girding himself, as he's filling the basin. He's about to wash the disciples' feet. There's a few things that I think we can learn from this. Who was Christ according to this passage? Well, it says there, it talks about how, in verse 1, that he should depart from this world to the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. So he was going to his Father, to be with his Father, and his Father was in heaven. So that already indicates something very special about Jesus. It also said there in verse 3, Jesus knew that the Father had given all things into his hands, and he should come from God and was going to God. So all things had been given into his hands. He had all power to go through this process to be able to destroy sin in one fell swoop. And he had come from God, and he was going to God. So essentially, we learn here that Jesus was the King of Kings. I mean, he was the big guy, like no greater here on earth. And yet he did something so meaningful. Jesus turned leadership upside down. Once again, we see Jesus turning things upside down. It wasn't tables this time. It was an idea that the earth had. You know, oftentimes when we think about leadership in an earthly sense, we think of the guy that's in charge and everybody's serving them and doing what they want and they just call the shots, and if you don't do it, then you're fired. You know, we kind of think of that kind of style of leadership. And the disciples were thinking about a leader who was in charge, who would go and conquer the Romans and deliver them from oppression. Jesus was setting a different precedent of humility. Jesus went about a task that no leader during his time would do. Because as Jesus set about the process of washing these people's feet, he was doing the thing that only servants would do. And as you think about how they were arrayed there in the room, they would have been kind of in a circle, and they would have been laying on their side a little bit, and their feet would have been facing outward. Even today, if you actually look at even verse 18 in this passage, Jesus talks a little bit about the foot that's lifted up. But even today, we know in the Middle East, if you have an encounter with someone's foot, it's not usually a pleasant thing. If they were to turn their bottom of their foot towards you, it's basically cursing you. It's not a friendly turn. When Saddam Hussein's statues were brought down, they hit his statue with their shoes. When George Bush was there, somebody threw some shoes at him. It's not a good thing. And so even here, this moment, Jesus is doing something not just a servant would do, but somebody that was kind of taking on a curse in some sense would do. And so Jesus is getting there and washing these feet of his disciples. No king would have done that. No leader would have done that. I think sometimes we even struggle with that. But yet Jesus did it. Philippians chapter 2, verse 7. This is really something that was all about Jesus' ministry. Philippians chapter 2 talks about Jesus coming from heaven and humbling himself. He became like us. And friends, I know sometimes we think we're great and wonderful, but we're sinners. And we're in need of a Savior. And Jesus became like us so that he could deliver us from sin. So he took this idea of humility. In chapter 2, verse 7, it says, "But made himself of no reputation, taking the form of a bondservant, and coming in the likeness of men." So Jesus had humbled himself and becoming a human being, and then now here he is humbling himself and being a servant as he washes the feet of the disciples. Stepping down, stepping down, stepping down. Truly incredible what Jesus is doing here. Now, what was the reaction of the disciples? Well, I'm sure there was a stir as they saw this man who they looked up to and revered stooping down to the level of a servant. We know a little bit about this, and we'll talk about it just a little bit in just a second here, but you can imagine maybe Judas. Judas was to the left of Jesus. He would have been the first one whose feet were washed. What the thoughts of Judas were at this moment? Why is he doing this? He's the Messiah. He's the king. No wonder I'm betraying him. He could not be a king. Kings wouldn't do this. And I can imagine, though, in that very moment, Jesus, in his own way of doing things, pleading with the heart of Judas. And then as the other disciples' feet were washed, and we'll talk about Peter in just a moment, but John was the last one to have his feet washed. Perhaps John has had a long time to reflect on what his fellow disciples have experienced. A long time to really think about what Jesus is doing. And we know that the only disciple that didn't submit to the leadings of Jesus was Judas. And so John would have submitted his will to Jesus in this moment. They'd gone from a time of bickering about who was the greatest to a time of great humility as their king, their teacher, their Lord was washing their feet. And it just kind of set things in the right order. This was a very special moment with Jesus. But continuing on in our story, John chapter 13. I'll get back there. John chapter 13, verses 6 through 11. We read about what Peter's experience was in this passage. So then he came to Simon Peter, and Peter said to him, Lord, you washing my feet? And Jesus answered and said to him, what I am doing you do not understand now, but you will know after this. And Peter said to him, you shall never wash my feet. No king, no teacher, no Lord will wash my feet. And so then Jesus responds, if I do not wash you, you have no part with me. And Simon Peter said to him, Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head. And Jesus said, he who is bathed needs only to wash his feet, but is completely clean, and you are clean, but not all of you. For he knew who would betray him, and therefore he said, you are not all clean. There's a really powerful moment with Peter. You know, some of us are like Peter today. Don't wash my feet, Lord. I'm not just talking about communion here, friends. I'm not just talking about the service of humility. We're talking about Jesus cleansing us from sin. Not my feet, Lord. I'm not worth. No, you can't do this. You can't stoop to that level. And Jesus says, look, Peter, if you want to be connected with me, I got to do this. And Jesus wasn't concerned about grimy or stinky feet, but Jesus was concerned about the heart of Peter. That was what Jesus was concerned with. But Peter, he doesn't get it. You know, we're kind of like that sometimes. And he doesn't get it. So he says, wash everything. Jesus says again, he's pointing to something much more beautiful. A higher kind of cleansing. Something that's not just outward, but that is an inward experience. Again, only one of his disciples would refuse this higher cleansing. All others accepted. Did it mean they were perfect in that moment? No. God was leading them step by step. Powerful thing was happening here. I love this quote from Desire Pages, one of my favorite books, written by one of the founders of the Adventist Church. He writes this: when Jesus girded himself in a towel to wash the dust from their feet, he desired that very act to wash the alienation, jealousy, and pride from their hearts. This was of far more consequence than the washing of their dusty feet. Sure, we should all wash our feet. I think we all appreciate that. But Jesus was getting at so much more. So much more. Continuing on with the passage, John 13, verses 12 through 17. It says, so then he washed their feet, taken his garments, and sat down again. He said to them, do you know what I have done to you? Of course, probably the answer is no, we don't fully understand. But he says, you call me teacher and Lord, and you say, well, for so I am. If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example that you should do as I have done to you. Most assuredly I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master, nor is he who is sent greater than he who sent him. If you know these things, blessed are you if you do them. Here I am, the King of the universe, doing this for you. You can do this for each other. Powerful stuff here, friends. We really are describing the service. I encourage you this afternoon, maybe, go read Desire Pages, the Sermon of Servants, the chapter, Sermon of Servants. There's a lot of stuff there. We're just barely scraping it. But Christ set not only a powerful example for the disciples, but also an example for us. In washing the feet of his disciples, Christ gave evidence that he would do any service, however humble, that would make them heirs with him of the eternal wealth of heaven's treasure. His disciples, imparting the same right, pledged themselves in like manner to serve their brethren. Jesus was willing to do anything to save us. He came down to the earth, became like us, and he was willing to even wash the feet of his disciples to get to their hearts for the purpose of saving them. I was just reflecting on this morning, and there's some deep stuff here. Are we willing not only to wash each other's feet, but to do anything possible that others might know Jesus? Friends, that's kind of uncomfortable. Because that might mean you're going and hugging someone that smells. That might mean you're moving into a neighborhood that isn't quite as nice. It could mean a lot of things. God wants you to do whatever necessary to help others know Him. He'll show you what that is. But what is the purpose of foot washing? I thought of three things. Humility. We are not above service. Friends, if we think that we're just supposed to be served, well, that's the leadership example of the earth. But that's not the leadership example of Christ. We are not above service. We can get down in the dirt, and that's okay. Reconciliation. It's a time for us to connect with each other. We'll talk more about this later this year, but communion service is a time to come together and connect once again. Maybe there's some frustration between each one of you. I've heard churches where there's people that are mad at each other, and this is an opportunity to connect. Not just with each other, but connect with God and give Him your sin. And then it's also a time of preparation. We be ready for the rest of the service to the recognition that we need Jesus. Very, very important. I'm about to close here. He's got a couple more quotes. Again, Desire of Ages says, "There is in man a disposition to esteem himself more highly than his brother, to work for himself, to seek the highest place, and often this results in evil surmising and bitterness of spirit. The ordinance preceding the Lord's Supper is to clear away these misunderstandings, to bring man out of his selfishness, down from his stilts of self-exaltation, to the humility of heart that will lead him to serve his brother." This is powerful stuff. She says again, and she says this also in reference to the disciples and why they had to have this happen before they could partake in the service. He says, "While pride, variance, and strife for supremacy are cherished, the heart cannot enter into fellowship with Christ. We are not prepared to receive the communion of His body and His blood. Therefore, it was that Jesus appointed the memorial of His humiliation to be first observed." See, the disciples weren't ready. They needed a moment just to realize who they were and their need of Christ. And that's why we do it as well. It's part of a reminder of who we are before Christ. I'll close with this story. I think it was last year. I was pastoring a small church. We had, on a good Sabbath, 13 people. And sometimes 5. It was a really special church. I'll remember it for a long time. But I remember there was this one couple that came that I just, shortly before I started pastoring this church, we made some changes in the district, and so I took this church on, and this couple came to church. They hadn't been to church before, and I hadn't met them yet. And they're an elderly couple. The man came in with a walker, and he was just really struggling to get anywhere. It was just very, very slow, very labored to get into the church. And as they came in, they said, hey, how's it going? Actually, I went up to them, and I greeted them. I like to do that. Hey, how's it going? My name is Marcus. Your name is? And they said, Glenda and Blake. And I think it would be okay if I shared this story. I didn't ask permission. But I remember them saying, we're here, we heard it was communion. We wanted to be here this Sabbath. It's been a long time since we had communion before, and we don't know when the next time will be that we can observe communion, and we wanted to be here for this Sabbath. Kind of give you a little bit of view of the ending. Next time I saw them was when I was anointing them, and just shortly before he died. It wasn't that much longer after this. We wanted to be here for this communion service. Praise God. And I remember watching them. Again, this guy's got his walker, and he's really struggling to walk and get back to the room where we're washing each other's feet. And I remember watching as his wife took off his shoes. It was no easy process. It was beautiful. Because they wanted to be there, and even though it was a struggle, they wanted to be there, they wanted to be a part. They washed each other's feet. It was just something amazing to behold. Friends, sometimes I think we miss out because we get stuck, well, it's embarrassing, or it's awkward. I gotta wash people's feet, and I gotta ask somebody to wash their feet, and I don't know, Lord, but there's something beautiful about this. So I want to ask, are you willing to embrace this moment of embarrassment and awkwardness to remind you what Christ has done for you, to allow him to change your heart? So let's just have a short prayer. Dear Father in heaven, Lord, we're so thankful for what you have done, stepping down time and time again to reach us in the only way that you can reach us, doing everything you can to reach us. Lord, as we remember this during this time, Lord, I pray you would speak to our hearts, that we might be humble, that we would reconcile with our brothers and sisters, that we would reconcile with you, and that we would be prepared for the rest of the service. We would be prepared to allow you into our heart once again today. I pray all this in your name.